Well, hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us and joining this interview with Keith Johnson. My name is Kara Robertson, and I am the Artistic Director of Ririe-Woodbury Dance Company, and we are based in Richmond, Virginia. So for today, I have Keith Johnson joining me, and I'll just go ahead and let him introduce himself.
Hi, everyone. I'm Keith Johnson. I am a dancer and a choreographer and a faculty member at Cal State Long Beach. And I'm, making a lot of work and kind of venturing out into other art forms and stuff. So I'm excited to be here today.
Wonderful. So we'll just jump right in. Keith, I want to know what project you're currently working on.
Currently in dance, I am working on this has been a really long project. It's called the Series Project, and I've made a solo like maybe 2 years ago, 3 years ago now, and I'm setting the same solo on 21 different dancers, and each of them have a different score. And each of them kind of bring their own training and their own ideas into it, but they have to maintain what the dance is. So the steps don't change, but they do it their own way. And it's been fascinating for me to kind of see this material on different bodies and different ages of dancers and different ideas about performance and things like that. So I think I'm like 13 in, and I'm having always trouble with the East Coast people because I never get out there. So and then the pandemic really hit us hard. So we had all these plans. So I've got to get out there and do the East Coast people, but hopefully it'll premiere. I've been invited to do it in LA next year, 2022. And so I'm excited about that. And little versions of it, like individual versions, have been shown. One in Korea, wow. One up in Oregon, a couple in California. And so they're being shown individually. So that's kind of exciting. But I kind of want to see them all together in like a museum setting or an open setting where people can kind of come and go. And I'm curious about how that will unfold. So I'm doing that. And then of course, I'm always making something on the students. So I'm teaching a BFA workshop, and maybe 3 years ago, I made a piece at Texas Tech University. And I was there for a week, and the kids were great and I loved it. But when you're a guest artist, you're just like pulling everything out and trying to put it together. So for this BFA workshop, I'm pulling it all apart, and we're recreating the piece that I made at Texas Tech, and then we are adding to it. And so it's been great. It's been really great. And I've learned a lot, and I think they're learning a lot too. Like, you just make that first sketch and then you pull it apart and go a little deeper. And so this is like the second step of that. And then what else am I doing? I just made a piece on Adrienne Fang in Maryland.
Wonderful.
She was amazing. And 2 of her grad students learned it as well. So that was a great process for me. And then I've got, what have I got? Oh, and I'm making a chandelier. I'm really into glass.
Oh, cool.
And I've been doing this, I want to retire in St. Croix in the Virgin Islands. So I kind of got into collecting beach glass and sea glass and stuff. And then I started doing stuff with it. And then I started like finding my own glass in thrift stores or bottles on the street or whatever. I was finding it everywhere. And now I kind of have this process of like, it's like tumbling it, but then it's putting it through it's just putting it through a lot of stress. So it comes out like beach glass, but but the colors are more rich because I can find the glass myself. So it's not just beer bottles and Coke bottles. So I've been doing that. And so now I'm making a chandelier. It's going to have like 100 pieces in it. And
wow,
so I'm working on that. Yeah, that's kind of hopefully my next thing is to kind of go into that thing.
The first project you mentioned, with the 21 dancers doing the solo that you had originally performed yourself, what do you envision the final product of that looking like? Is it everyone dancing on stage together? Is it a live in-person performance, or is that something that's more, you mentioned a premiere, but is that like, are you making a film out of that?
No, I'm always thinking I should make a film because that's what people do, and that would be easier in some ways. There's just something about a body moving through space in front of people live that I've never not been interested in that. So my goal would be this: I would have a big open like museum space. Maybe other things were going on, and each of them would do it solo, one at a time, and then they would just add up. So, and then at the back of the stage or whatever, there'd be like a platform where after they'd finish it, they'd go sit. So by the end, you'd see the 21 dancers, and the ideas in it are about religion and about death and about family and the environment. So they're all kind of woven together.
Mm-hmm.
In a way. They all have a connection. So I'm curious to see if they were shown all together, if people would either just get bored of watching the thing over and over and over, or if there's enough difference and there's enough, I want to say, the performance, I think if it's of each of the dancers is strong, I think people will stay with it. I'm hoping, we'll see. It's a risk, but I feel like I kind of always wanted to do what I wanted to do anyway. Yeah. I mean, a couple of years ago, I did this project called Bodies Matter, and it was a half-hour solo that I made at the Jurassic artist residency. And then I taught it to, or I didn't teach it, I sent the video out to 8 dancers. And we did it on World AIDS Day, and it was an 8-hour installation that was just the same piece over and over and over. And people really responded to it, and they loved it. And people came and left, and I kind of like that idea of like, you can see what you want and then leave, or you could come back. I had some people stay for the entire 8 hours, which was interesting to me. So I'm kind of curious about all of that. I think it goes back, I was a gymnast. So back in the day, in my day, there was the compulsory exercises where everybody had to do the exact same thing. And what came out of that was you'd watch the technique of the gymnast, or you'd watch the nuances or where their strengths were and how they exploited those, but still kept within the framework of the routine. And I think that's always kind of stayed with me, like that idea of like, how do you individualize something that's set and celebrate that person?
Yeah, that's awesome. I love that idea. And so you mentioned gymnastics. That leads me into my next question. How did you find dance, and what was your transition like from gymnastics to dance?
Okay, I was a gymnast for a long time, and people always kind of thought I had trained in dance when I was in gymnastics, because I was more artistic than powerful, let's say.
Okay.
And there was a gymnast, her name is Kathy Johnson, no relationship, but she was on the USA team from, I believe, like 1976 through 84. And she came to our gym at one time, and they were getting ready for USA Japan meet, and I watched her like a hawk. And she did a whole like ballet bar before she started, and she was very artistic. She had these beautiful arms, and she was just a beautiful dancer, and she was tough. So I saw her wipe out on the balance beam like terribly, and she got up like it was nothing, and she just kept going. And that really instilled something. So there was that artistic side of her, but there was also that really like, okay, we're going to get this job done. And so she made it to the 1980 Olympic team, and they were boycotted by the USA. So she held on until she was 24 to the LA Games. And so I'd kind of seen her over a long period of time, like up her level of difficulty, but always remain that artistry. And I just really had kind of this connection with her, although I've never really met her. We're friends on Facebook. And and I've told her that, you know, she was kind of the inspiration for me to start dancing because it was a good transition for that. And so it was always in the back of my mind. I competed through college, and then but I didn't finish my degree. And so I had one more year left, and I started taking classes and everything because now I had a whole bunch of time that I wasn't practicing anymore. And I took art classes and other things. I just wasn't very good at it. And then one of my friends said, you should try dance, just try it. And I did. And it was really hard. And I thought I would be really good at it. And I was terrible. And so there's something about that I loved, you know, that I wasn't, it's just a different playing field. And I was like, here I am, I'm in really great shape, I'm flexible. It seems like that's all the qualities that a dancer needs, but it was really hard. And so I was intrigued by it, and I just stuck with it. And then, you know, I was at BYU at the time, whole other story. And they were very gracious about letting non-majors in their dance program. So I started taking class and understanding things. And, you know, men in dance seemed to have a different trajectory, and I was athletic, and I seemed to move up very fast and have a lot of opportunities. And so I did that, and then I auditioned for Ririe-Woodbury, and I didn't make it. I made it down to like the final 4 or something, and then Joanne Woodbury and Shirley Ririe were like, you should come to get your master's degree at the University of Utah. And I was like, no, I don't. I didn't like school very much anyway. And so, but I did it because I thought, well, you know, I was already 22 when I started dancing. And so I was like, I have to fast track this if I want to do it.
Yeah.
So I went there, and basically I was getting my master's degree supposedly, but I think they knew that I wanted to be a performer. And so I was heavy in the training part of it, and maybe the theoretical stuff wasn't really where I was putting my emphasis. And I think it was at a time in universities, I could be wrong here, maybe this is just my memory, but they seem to embrace that, like, okay, we can kind of fit this to you, where nowadays I feel like it would be like, no, you should just go to a studio or train or something like that. And then I got in to Ririe-Woodbury. So I started dancing at 22, and I got into Ririe-Woodbury at 25, which was really fast and very unnerving in some ways, because I don't think I was really ready. You know, I think again, physically I could do it, but I didn't really get it. And the first piece I ever did was an Alwin Nikolais piece, and I was like, what are we doing? I don't, you know, the whole technique and stuff. So there's something about, I mean, for me, it had to happen that way, because I think I would have just been like, I got to get a job, I got to do this. Yeah. And I would have been distracted with something else in life. But when I look at my students now that are, you know, have 4 years of college, and then they graduate, and then they might have like another 4 or 5 years kind of just taking classes and figuring things out, I kind of am jealous of it, because I didn't really get that kind of experience. I just was shot in there, and I think it was a little overwhelming sometimes.
Yeah. I think it's kind of good to hear your perspective and experience on immediately entering a company after college, because I think that's what so many dancers out there want.
Yes.
But it's nice to know that sometimes just taking classes and having a break in between college and potentially joining a company can definitely be a very good thing.
Yeah, I agree. And I think there's, you know, I never really got that chance to explore, like really be like, you know, all of a sudden I was thrown into these residencies where I was teaching dance to people, and I was like, I don't really know. I'm winging it. And, I spent a lot of time in the studio trying to figure it all out. And I had great mentors, but still, it's just like that window of time where you graduate and you kind of understand what your degree was about and you explore it and you're like, that worked maybe in college. I think I got to move on to something else. Or this was my interest in college. Now I've evolved to something else. So I always tell my students, like, don't be in a hurry to get, and don't have like one dream job. I mean, because, it never works out the way you want it to work out.
Yeah, life. So you were with Ririe-Woodbury. And then how long were you there? And then, because I know that you also danced with Bill T. Jones and Arnie Zane Dance Company, as well as Doug Varone and Dancers, which are both New York-based companies. So when did you move from Salt Lake to there?
I was in Ririe-Woodbury for about 8 years. And it was great. I finished my master's degree the 6th year I was in the company. So I was kind of, getting ready to move on. And, when a company has a lot of turnover, you have to learn that rep over and over and over again. And by the 8th year, I was like, I can't keep doing this. I mean, I need some new challenges.
Yeah.
So, and I kind of wanted to move out of Salt Lake City, even though it was beautiful and I loved, it was easy to live in, as a dancer, I was making money. But I just felt like I was missing out on like the dance world. And it's a solid community of dance there too, but I felt like there was more. So I just had that feeling of I gotta go. And so I sent out VHSs back in the day to like 5 choreographers. I think Terry O'Connor, maybe Susan Marshall, David Parsons, somebody else, and then Bill T. Jones. And everybody wrote back and said, we're not interested, or no, not right now, or move to New York. Basically, it was move to New York. We're not going to hire you from Salt Lake City.
Yeah.
And Bill T. Jones called me. I was on tour in Alaska with Ririe-Woodbury, and he called me on the phone and left a message and said, this is Bill T. Jones. I'm doing a new project called Still Here. I would love you to apprentice. There's no jobs whatsoever. So this would just be for your experience, and you're more than welcome to come. And again, there's no jobs. So I was like, I'm going. So Joanne Woodbury graciously let me go because usually June was the turnover month for new dancers since I was leaving anyway. So somebody else trained the dancer that replaced me, and she let me go. And then I went and we put together the first half of Still Here. We did Still in that 3 weeks. They'd been working on it, but I got to perform it at Aaron Davis Hall, in like a showing. And kind of was like, that was a great experience. And Bill said, I want to talk to all the apprentices after, one day to say thank. I thought he was just going to say thank you. So there were 3 of us, and for some reason, I was the last one to go, and he offered me a job, and I was like, what? I thought there were no jobs. So I got the job, and then I was like, okay, well, that's great. I'm going to move to New York, and I have a job, which is perfect. Doesn't life unfold perfectly?
Yeah.
And so then I got home, and on I think it was July 3rd, maybe July 2nd, I don't know. I got a call from Arthur Aviles, and he said, Bill wanted me to call you to let you know you don't have a job anymore. And I was like, what? And so what happened was I was replacing Torrin Cummings, and he was leaving because his girlfriend, Gabri Krista, was an apprentice, but there was no job for her. So he's like, I want to be with her or whatever. If you don't have a job for her, I'm leaving. And Bill was like, okay, see ya. And Keith's gonna take your place. And they went to ADF during that time. I got hired and fired. They went to ADF, and Andrea Woods got injured, and she was the exact same body type and height and everything as Gabri Krista. So they hired Gabri because she was apprenticing. And then Torrance said, I'm not leaving. So then I was like, you gotta be kidding me. So there,
my
so,
goodness.
so that didn't work out. And it just so happened that I kind of stalked Creach Koester, Steve Koester and Terry Creach, because it was an all men's company that I loved. And I'd seen them perform and they were kind of athletic and gymnastic-y. And I was like, I want to do that company. So they got in touch with me and, oh no, actually I worked with them after I did the Still Here thing. I was in New York, they were at NYU. And I kind of went into some rehearsals and then they said, come back and work with us. You're great. And I was like, I think I have a job with Bill T. And they were like, oh. And then I called them right after. I was like, I don't have a job with Bill T. So I worked with them. I was taking care of my mother. She had cancer. And so I was commuting from Fairfield, Connecticut into New York and dancing for Steve and Terry and trying to figure that all out and taking classes and things like that. And loving it. I loved Steve and Terry's work. I loved the dancers. It was great. But I had a monkey on my back. I mean, I was a chip on my shoulder. I was angry about the Bill T. Jones thing because I had been sent the touring schedule and everything to go in this tour, and they were getting a lot of press. Still Here was really big, and then Arlene Croce didn't review it, and then it got even bigger. So that I was missing out on all that. They were on the cover of Time magazine company, and I just was like, oh, this is like wound after wound. And so then there was an audition again for Bill, like 8 months later, and I was like, I'm going. I'm just gonna end it. I'm gonna end it. I'm gonna look at him one more time and be like, and so I went, was super nervous, and he ran by me in we were like running around the room at the opening of it. He goes, I'm glad you're here. And I was like, oh, great. And we did Still Here repertory, which I helped make. So I knew it all. So I was like, I know this. And then I made it again as an apprentice. There were 6 men, and I went through the summer again, dancing with Creach Koester and apprenticing with Bill and folding sweaters at Banana Republic at night.
Yeah.
Then Roz LeBlanc got injured. She got a stress fracture in her shin. And so I replaced her. I was there to replace Arthur. He was leaving, but Roz got injured. So I did her roles for the first 6 months. And then I moved over to Arthur's roles. And then I did the Still Here tour, which was another like 2 years. And then I think I did like a half a year doing some rep stuff with them until he could replace me, because I was pretty much, my hips were starting to go. I had some injuries. And so I kind of needed to slow down a little bit. It was a really intense touring thing and stuff. I loved it, and I love him. He changed my life. He was intense and demanded a lot. And so I loved that. And so I left his company, and then I went back to Creach Koester for about another 3 or 4 years. I had actually gotten the job at Long Beach and then was traveling back and forth to New York and doing that. And then, should I tell you about how I got into Doug?
Yeah, I want to know.
Like the whole chapter.
And what time period was this? Like, what years?
This is like 94 through like 2001, all of this. And so, I was dancing pretty full time. I was also dancing with Amy Spencer and Richard Colton in Boston. I was traveling back and forth to do that.
Yes.
They were former Twilight dancers. And so anyway, I was with Terry Creach, and we were dancing at Joyce Soho. And Terry pulled me aside and said, look, I don't know if I can keep you in the company. It's just too expensive to fly you back and forth. And so I think I just have to hire a New York dancer. And I was like, of course, I totally understand. And I had a job. I just bought a house out here. And so I was kind of like, okay, that's the way it goes. And, I totally understand it. It just so happened on the last night of that show, Kei Takei, who I danced with Janis Brenner, they came to Long Beach, and I did a show with them. and he came to the show with Doug Varone the last night, and you know, I just thought, oh, that's great, nice to see Doug. And Eddie, after the show, said, great job, can you come to the 92nd Street Y tomorrow? We're premiering or we're showing a dance. And I was like, of course, yeah, I'd love to see it. And then I walked in and Doug came over to me and he said, would you be interested in a job with me? And I was like, what? Again, like, what? And so, so I was like, yeah, definitely. And so I went back to California, got a leave of absence, rented my house, and went back to New York and danced in like 2 years with Doug. And then really my body fell apart. My hips were gone. I had to have right when I left Doug's company, I walked with a cane for like 3 or 4 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, and it was just a tough time. My mother had died of cancer. And so I was kind of in a weird place. And, you know, let me just go back a little bit. When I was in New York and dying to be in Doug's company and was scheming all the time, like strategizing, how am I going to get into his company? How am I going to get into his company? He worked out at the same gym as me. I mean, I saw him every day and I couldn't get the time of day from him. So, you know, at a certain age, you're just like, oh, that'll never happen. Move on. And so then when it happened, and then I was dancing with Gwen and Eddie and Larry Hahn and Nancy Bannon and Adrian Fang and Mercedes. And, you know, it was just like the dream. Daniel Sharon and I started at the same time. It was like the dream cast.
Yeah.
You know, for me, it was like the icing on top of the cake. So I'm glad I experienced it. I wish I could have stayed longer, but I remember sitting down with Doug and saying, look, there's going to be a day where you're going to have a really important concert and I won't be able to do it because my body's literally falling apart and I'm being held together by Celebrex and tape. And so I need to go. And he was very gracious. I have to say, very kind-hearted. Yeah. And like, let's make a plan for this. And we did. And I left feeling, I mean, I was sad, but I also was like, okay, I did the right thing for me, which is, you know, sometimes hard when you are in that. And I was already I was like 41, you know, we were older, you know, so at a certain point, you know, I had to just accept it, that I didn't have the physicality anymore. Yeah. But it was a tough one.
Yeah. But I mean, that's amazing that you've been able to dance with such well-known companies and that's just an incredible experience. Yeah. So you were in New York City in the dance scene and dance community in the 90s and early 2000s. So yeah. For you, what have been the biggest shifts in the dance world and maybe even specifically the New York scene from then compared to now?
I think the biggest shift is that there's not as many jobs, it appears to be, you know, like it's harder to get into things. I just don't think there's the funding and there's not the money or the time or the studio space or, you know, especially for up and coming choreographers to afford, it's very difficult. And so I've noticed that, you know, my students will be like, I want to move to New York and, you know, and do all these things. And part of me is like, I don't know if it's still there the same way it was when I was there. Like, I felt like, you know, when I sent kids in the 90s and the early 2000s to New York, I felt like they had a different experience than the ones now. It seems like the ones now are just getting a job and they're working so much just to kind of survive that they kind of give up in some ways, or it's really hard, or they have to piece together this life that's really more intense than I, you know, had to deal with. I mean, I folded sweaters, it was a drag, but I did it just kind of for extra money. Yeah. And things like that. But, you know, like one of my dancers that's dancing with me now here, he just came back from New York during the pandemic. And he was dancing in a company and he was he worked at a restaurant, then he opened a restaurant, then he was also working as a theater tech at nights. He said he had 5 jobs, you know, and he was trying to dance. And he said it was just super intense for him and he couldn't sustain it forever.
Yeah.
When I danced for Bill, it seemed like they had a whole machine behind them. Like it was like there was like this operation that was, you know, they could just relentlessly go for these. And when I worked for Doug, and I taught for him at the workshop quite often. I mean, he would spend a whole day in the studio teaching and making his works, and then doing these lecture dems at night. And then we would get back, and I'd be exhausted. And he would go into his room, and he'd be on that computer, you know, go on to the next project, on to the next project. And so I really admire that ability. I don't know if that's my lot in life. I like to make things. I like to make work. I like to have dancers that I really love around me that are looking at me for their livelihood 100%. So there's a little bit of more like, you know, we're in this together, and, you know, and so, and I pay them, but there's kind of this understanding, like, it's like, you know, you can come and go. And if this project isn't really good for you, then you know, right now I have a dancer having a baby, and she's like, I hope you'll bring me back. And I said, of course I'll bring you back. I mean, so Chris Fan just moved back from New York, and one of my other dancers, Spencer, just moved to Austin, Texas. So now, you know, it's like Chris comes back, Spencer's gone. When Spencer's ready to come back, you know, somebody else will leave. So I have this kind of like revolving door of dancers.
Gotcha.
You know, it just has worked out better for me. And how do I say this in the right way? Because I don't want to like sound like my way is the best way. Because part of me admires like Kyle Abraham and Doug and people that are really pushing forward and getting their touring a lot and everything like that. I just like the process. If I never had to do a show, I'd be happy. I just like being in the studio making it, you know, and that's fun to me. And so quite often I've sent my dancers out to different places for tours or whatever, and I don't even go. I'm like, just let me know how it went. My kind of my part in it's kind of over.
Okay.
So, you know, I don't know. Maybe I'm too sensitive for, you know, to have people, you know, kind of roll their eyes at things or stuff, because I really love to make it, you know. I love to make work. So I mean, I think Doug taught me that too. You know, he'd be so happy about making work when we were in the studio, and that really resonated with me. So I like that part of it. By the time you get the posters and the t-shirts, and you know, for Bodies Matter, I did a fundraiser. First time I ever did it. And I thought I was going to die, because I would be like, hey, Kara, how's it going? Can you give me $100? That's my whole life. You know, it seems so weird to me. And I've been in these companies that they're asking for funding all the time.
Yeah.
And I've given money to them and stuff. But when it was me asking for the money, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. And so I thought, rather than just give up totally, I'm going to make this work for myself. And one of my friends, Bahare Ebrahimzadeh, she dances for me. She's danced for me for like 13 years. And she sat me down once and she was like, how do you want to make this work? What's in it for you that's going to make this enjoyable and fun? And so we had a long talk about that. She keeps me on track. And so I do what I want when I want, you know, with who I want, you know, and it's worked out well for me.
Yeah, I think it's just a different way of operating, and it's it might not be the right way for someone else, but it's the right way for you. And I think there's obviously multiple different ways that you can do what you want to do. So there's no one size fits all.
What's hardest for me is that sometimes people weigh in, that the outsiders weigh in and go, you should be doing this, or you'd be really successful if you do this. And I'm just like, well, I feel successful in my own way, and I'm doing other things, and I really love the students at Cal State Long Beach, and I love teaching.
Mhm.
So, part of that is, and I'm at a teaching institution, so I'm not really at a research one where you have to be out in the world and big, showing work and major venues and things like that.
Mhm.
My teaching is important to me. It's a valuable thing, and I'm teaching kids that maybe started dance late like me. It's a state school. They might not have have had the economic advantage to train as dancers as young,
Mhm.
and so I found the right place for me as far as a teacher in that way. Because I was them. I started at 22. I know what it feels like to feel like you got to get it. You got to get it. So for me, it's been really good. And if I was, I'll leave like I left for Maryland for a week, and that's fine to go. It helps me mentally kind of get away.
Yeah.
But I love it. I like that part of it. So I've kind of balanced it all out in a good way for me.
Yeah, that's great. So you left Doug's company, you moved to California.
Yeah.
Is that right? At what point did you start Keith Johnson and Dancers? Was that like kind of simultaneously while you were still performing, or did that happen after the move?
No. I was in Long Beach in 97.
Okay.
That's when it started. So, and then after the first year in Long Beach, I was like, oh, I need an outside kind of source of making work. Because when a lot of times when you're making work on students, it's like your arm goes here, you walk there, you're teaching. It's like a class in some ways, which I love. But I wanted to have something that was like, I could experiment more with what I was working on.
Mhm.
So I started in 98. Colleen Thomas, who I also have danced with, and Bill Young, we made a duet together. She was just starting out as a choreographer, and I had made a few pieces. So we decided to collaborate on something. So I made a piece, we made a piece, and then I did 2 other pieces, and we premiered the company in 98. And so, and I celebrated the 20th anniversary a couple of years ago. And yeah, I've made a lot of work, and I just decided that I needed to have an outlet that was away from school. I had, the nice thing is I have rehearsal space at school.
Yeah.
During the pandemic, I had to rent rehearsal space up in LA, which was fine. It was nice to be out of the building, but I don't know how people do it because it was $40 an hour.
Yeah.
And it's a different tone. It's a totally different tone in rehearsal. Like, you need to get it because we got 15 minutes. And
Yeah.
so that was kind of good for me to experience, because mad props to these dancers that are renting space and making things work or finding things like that, because I do have the luxury of having space. And right now it's a little iffy because you can't have very many people in, but for all those years I had space. And so I don't underestimate the power of that alone. And I can see why people want university jobs, to have that kind of foundation. I think the tricky thing is that, I mean, you think you get this university job, you're going to teach your few classes, and then the rest of the day is going to be to make your work. Well, you're on committees.
Yeah.
Students need you to be in their rehearsals. You're making work for the students. You've got this and this and this. So it's not, I thought it was like this magical place that you go when you finish performing as a dancer. And I think there's a reality to academia that is a lot more complex than people think. Yeah, I think it's kind of this, I laugh at my family sometimes because they're like, oh, you only work on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays, but Tuesdays and Thursdays might be filled with meetings all day, or you're grading, or you're doing, somebody's having a meltdown and you want to make sure they're okay.
Yeah.
So it's a lot more than I thought. And I don't know, that gymnastics training is just like, you just do it. You don't have time to, which I don't think is right. but we just did it. It was like you put the thing on, but I'm 61, and so I'm dealing with 18-year-olds. I'm like their grandparent.
Yeah.
So, there's freedom in that too, because they'll come to me in a way that, they think I like must be mature and have it all together, which I don't. But there's something about that age gap that has helped me too as a teacher now. I'm enjoying it more, really.
Yeah.
I've gone through all the tenure stuff and the professor stuff, and which is a nightmare for anybody. And now I'm just like, okay, I'm going to do what I want. I think I know. I think I've kind of earned it. I love teaching.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. So going back to the company and like your process, and you said you just love the process of creating, and you kind of talked about some of the choreographic projects you're working on now. How do you create choreography? Are you using tools, methods? Are you just improvising? And how much of a voice do your dancers typically have in that process?
I'm doing all the above. Improvisation, it really intrigues me. I'm trying to, expand on that.
Mhm.
I use a lot of tools that I learned from Ririe-Woodbury. Creach Koester had a major impact on me as far as crafting material. Doug Varone had a major impact on me as far as musicality, even though I'm not a musical person, but the awareness of it and how he threads people through. Bill T. Jones just taught me not to care and do what I want. And if the world doesn't like it, so so all of them, they're kind of in there.
Yeah.
I surround myself with dancers that I love as people and that trust me and that want to be in the room. And so, yes, they all have a part in making material. They give me feedback. They have their own opinions about things. And I give them credit for it's never a dance made by me. It's always in collaboration with the dancers. And I always acknowledge if I repeat the dance, like who the original dance makers were in the room when I made it. Those are important things that I've carried over from myself as a dancer. But then I'm at the helm of it. So eventually someone's got to make a decision. And so it's not democratic in that way, that eventually I'll say, no, we're going to go in this direction. And sometimes, people don't agree, and that's fine. But I think they trust me. I've surrounded myself with people that have stayed with me. I've had people that have been around for 13, 14 years.
Yeah.
So they kind of come and go, and they do their own work. And, so it depends. If I'm reading something and it inspires me, then I try to incorporate that into it. Visual art, I kind of try to incorporate. I was working with a painter, and she talked about walking away from something, her paintings over and over. And so I tried that for a whole process of okay, I'm going to look at it from this angle, then I'm going to look at it from another angle. I'm going to step back all the time. So that was something that she instilled in me. Sometimes I make the parts on certain dancers and then take those parts and put it on other dancers to see how it evolves. And so they have to kind of trust that, sometimes they get bent out of shape, like, oh, that's the greatest. I made that. I want to do that. And I'm like, sorry, we're going to just try it over here. But, I don't know. I have fun with them. And I love making it. And I think they love making it. And then it's really more about, we're like feisty, and we're like a, we know we're not going to be at the Joyce, and we're not going to be at, BAM or anything like that, which would be great if we were. Mm-hmm. But we're kind of we're making our thing. We're doing our thing. We got our group. We're like we're like a rock and roll band in some dive bar, having a great time. And, and I like it. I mean, I like that part of it. I just, I think when you're in companies that are super successful and touring and stuff, you also are privy to the mechanics of it and the frustrations of it. and the fear in it, and the 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 critics are there. I've read some reviews of, where it just felt like the critics were just after us. They didn't really see the work. They were just after us when I danced with Bill and Doug, and I was just like, they're not even helping build up the community. It's hard enough as it is.
Yeah.
And so, I see it, I'm still friends with Bill. I still see Doug. I see Steve Koester every once in a while, and of course, Ririe-Woodbury. But, you see it just weathers you. It's just hard. So part of me is like, do I really want that?
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good reminder to continue to have fun.
Right.
Find the joy in dance, because I think that's why we started and continued with dance in the first place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, there's a sense of play that I really started rediscovering during the COVID online teaching. I was reminding my students, like, we just need to play. And so because it was so open in the process of teaching this time, so I didn't have those same hoops to jump through when it's live. I felt like I allowed them to play more, and they were excited about it. And so it just changed my philosophy about it, about everything. And so sometimes, like right now, I'm making some dances that I don't even know when they're going to premiere. I'm just making them because I like making them. So I have like 3 or 4 dances in the vault that are ready to go whenever.
Mm-hmm.
But if I waited around for somebody else to give me an opportunity to dance, then I'm just like, well, I'm not in the cool group. I've never been in the cool group. So that's a whole other system that I just can't do. So last summer, my gymnastics coach gave me space. He's got a dance studio connected to his gym, and he gave me space for I think it was a week. And Paul Madison flew out from Philadelphia, and I flew from California to Arizona, and we made a 17-minute solo on him. So we're waiting to premiere that somewhere too. So it was fun. And, Paul and I danced together for a long time, and it was just fun to vacation and talk about life and, make a dance. That's what I would do for the rest of my life if I could.
Yeah, that sounds nice. I would do that too. So, and we've kind of talked about younger dancers entering the fields post college or maybe even post high school. But what advice would you give someone who's about to enter the professional world?
I would say a couple of things. I would say it's not going to unfold the way you think it's going to. So if you're one of those people that has a planner and you've planned out your life for the next 5 years, tear it up, or just expect that it's not going to unfold that way. It just never does. And if it does, you win the lottery.
Yeah.
I would also say have a voice, and don't be afraid to speak up, but also be respectful of maybe that people that have been in the game a little bit longer, and they might be a little more tired or burnt out or whatever, and that you're kind of entering a new thing. It's not a level playing field all the time. I remember when I was dancing with Doug, and Eddie had been dancing for 15 years with him, and Larry Hahn was their original. And then we'd get people that were right out of college, and they wanted to, we couldn't run a piece 4 times. It was like, you got to get it. You got to do your homework, and you got to get it, because our bodies won't hold up. So there was that kind of thing. I just think they didn't really understand it, coming out of college where you have 10 weeks sometimes to learn a piece, going into a professional company where you have 3 days, and you have to watch it on video yourself and get it. I learned Still Here on video by myself. I learned the whole thing, and then I had one rehearsal with the company before we flew to Tokyo. So you had to know it. And so I think sometimes it's not going to be delivered to you in the way it was in college. you know,
Yeah.
in a way. And, time is money.
Yeah.
And so you've got your studio space you're renting. It's like, we can't wait for you to take 25 minutes to learn a phrase when, so it's those kind of things. But I think sometimes dancers too, maybe not so much now because I think people have been encouraged to find their voice more. But I think a lot of times in my generation, it was just like, don't say anything, just be in the right place at the right time. And, but I don't necessarily believe in that. But again, that was my gymnastics training too. It's like, you have no opinion about anything.
Yeah.
Really wrong. And it sets up a lot of power dynamics that are really unhealthy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. So where can people find you? Mostly online, and where can they support your work?
I have a Facebook page, Kei Johnson Dancers, that they could more than welcome to add. I would love that. I have a website, KeiJohnsonDancers.com.
Thank you so much, Keith, for your time today. It was a pleasure chatting with you and learning more about your story and how you got to be where you are today. So thank you.
Thank you.